I still remember the day the reunion invitation came in. It was a simple white card in a gold-trimmed envelope, probably my sister's doing. She always loved making things look fancy. "Join us for a family celebration," it said. "Bring your stories, your smiles, and your memories." It sounded innocent enough. A warm gathering of family, laughter, old jokes, awkward hugs, the usual. But my stomach twisted the moment I held it. Because I knew, deep down, this wasn't just a celebration, it was another stage. And I'd once again be the one sitting quietly in the wings, while everyone else got their applause. I hadn't seen my dad in nearly 2 years. The last time we spoke, he told me to grow up and stop being a dreamer. He didn't believe in what I did for a living. Thought my freelance career was a joke, that I was wasting my time, and worse, his legacy. But still, I thought maybe something's changed. Maybe he misses me. Maybe, just maybe, this is his way of reaching out without saying it directly. So I bought the train ticket. I packed a small bag, and with a knot in my chest, and a sliver of hope in my heart, I went. What I didn't know, what I couldn't know, was that this reunion would not only rip open wounds I thought had scarred over, it would change how I saw my father forever. Because what he said at that dinner table, with everyone watching, would not just break me, it would reveal a truth I had buried for years. A truth about who I was in his eyes, and how I was never really his. The reunion was held at my sister Caroline's house. She had just finished renovating it, again, and was all too eager to show off the marble countertops and walk-in wine cellar. Everyone was there. Aunt Margie, Uncle Ray, my cousins, even my youngest brother Tyler flew in from Seattle. And then, there was me. Walking through that door felt like stepping into a spotlight I didn't ask for. Caroline greeted me with her usual air kiss, the kind that never quite touched skin. "Oh, you came," she said, like it was both a surprise and a mild inconvenience. I tried to smile, tried to blend in, but even as I stood among them, laughter filling the air and old stories being tossed around like popcorn, I felt invisible. Dinner was a grand affair. Long wooden table, china plates, wine glasses that clinked like secrets being whispered. Dad sat at the head, like a king surveying his kingdom. I sat 3 chairs down, quiet, listening. Then came the toast. Caroline stood up first, toasted to family, resilience, and success. Tyler toasted his new tech startup, and everyone clapped like he had just cured cancer. Finally, my dad rose, glass in hand, eyes steady. He said, "I just want to say how proud I am of all my children. Caroline, for building a beautiful home and family. Tyler, for making waves in Silicon Valley. And even little Emily, for her volunteer work." Then he paused, looked straight at me, and added, "And to the rest of us, who strive to be better every day." There was no mention of me, not even a glance in my direction, just silence, cold, deliberate silence. It was like being erased in real time. And that was when something inside me cracked, not like glass, but like ice, quiet, slow, irreversible. I don't remember walking to my car. I just remember the sound of my own heartbeat, loud, sharp, drowning out the laughter that spilled from the house behind me. That same laughter I used to chase when I was a kid. That same house where I once thought I belonged. When I closed the car door, the silence was too much. It echoed all the words I wished I had said at that dinner table, like, "You forgot me, Dad." Or maybe, "I didn't ask for your approval, but you didn't have to humiliate me either." But I didn't say anything. I just sat there, staring at the wheel, feeling like a 12-year-old again, waiting for him to see me. You know what hurts most? It's not that he didn't say he was proud of me. It's that he deliberately reminded everyone that I was the disappointment, the other one, the one who didn't live up to the family name. I'm not rich. I don't have a trophy spouse or a flashy career, but I've worked hard. I pay my bills, I help my neighbors, I volunteer, I exist. Isn't that worth something? As I sat there in the driveway, still in full view of that glowing house and its perfect people, a memory hit me. I was 7, and I had painted a picture in art class. Nothing special, just a crooked little tree with a smiling sun. I ran home with it, excited to show my dad. He looked at it and said, "Is that it?" 3 words. Just 3. And somehow, I've been trying to prove I'm more than just that ever since. That night in the car, I realized something. Maybe I was chasing the wrong approval. Maybe it was never mine to have. But one thing was clear. I couldn't sit there forever. I had to do something. Not for him. For me. The next morning, I woke up feeling heavy. Not tired. Weighed down, like I'd been carrying my father's words on my back through my sleep. Except the loser. That sentence had carved itself into my thoughts like a cruel tattoo. I sat at the kitchen table with a cold cup of coffee, staring out the window. Dust. The world outside looked normal. The birds still sang. The sun still rose. Lust. But inside me, a storm was building. That's when it hit me. Dad didn't know anything about my life. Not really. He didn't know how many nights I stayed up late, tutoring kids from low-income families. He didn't know that I helped a friend escape an abusive relationship by letting her stay in my apartment for 3 months, even when I was barely scraping by myself. He didn't know that I'd once spent my last $200 to fix a stranger's car in a grocery store parking lot. Because I saw a child crying in the back seat, and I couldn't walk away. But those things don't come with trophies. There's no graduation photo, no corporate plaque, no look at my perfect child moment to show off at the dinner table. Still, they mattered. They mattered to me. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized. Maybe I wasn't the loser at all. Maybe I was just invisible to someone who only values what he can brag about. That morning, I made a decision. I wasn't going to chase his approval anymore. But I also wasn't going to let his words define me. So I opened my laptop. I started writing an email. Not to him. No, to someone else in the family. Someone who deserved to know the truth. Someone who had looked uncomfortable during Dad's outburst. Because this story, it wasn't over. Kwang 345-2. The cursor blinked on my screen, almost in rhythm with my heartbeat. I wasn't writing to my dad. I was writing to my cousin Ava. She had been sitting across the table during the reunion. Silent, but not indifferent. When Dad said what he said, she flinched. She looked right at me, and in her eyes I saw something rare in our family. Empathy. So I wrote, "Hey Ava, I wanted to thank you. You probably didn't realize it, but the way you looked at me during the reunion, it kept me from crumbling. I don't know if you heard everything Dad said, but I felt it. I've been trying to live my life with meaning, even if it doesn't look like success to him. I guess I just needed to tell someone in the family that I'm not ashamed of who I am." I hesitated before hitting send. Was I being too vulnerable? Too dramatic? But no, that was the old me. The version that constantly tiptoed around other people's feelings, even when mine were being stomped on. I hit send. Less than 5 minutes later, my phone buzzed. "Ava, I did hear him, and it made me sick. You've always been the one who actually shows up when it matters. I remember when you stayed with Grandma every night in her last month. No one talks about it, but I saw you. I've always been proud of you, always." Tears welled up in my eyes, and for the first time since the reunion, I smiled. That message reminded me, sometimes the people who matter won't clap the loudest. But they see you. They remember the moments you think went unnoticed. That day, I promised myself I'd stop living for the applause of people who didn't know my worth. Because maybe the ones who whisper support mean more than those who shout disappointment. After Ava's message, I sat in my small apartment with the lights off, just the street lamp spilling amber through the blinds. Silence can be loud when it's carrying everything you've never said. I looked around the room, the books on the shelf I'd read to get through dark times, the sketch pad on the table that held my dreams, unrealized maybe, but still mine, the fridge with sticky notes from my students. "Thank you for listening. You made today better. I'll never forget what you said." Maybe I wasn't building empires. Maybe I wasn't buying houses or trading stocks. But was I really a loser? I thought about that word. Loser. It echoed like a hammer in my chest. It wasn't just what Dad said. It was what he never said. At graduations, when I landed my job as a youth counselor, when I published a small essay that got shared by thousands online, he didn't celebrate those things because they didn't look shiny to him. But in that quiet room, I realized I wasn't living to impress him anymore. I was living for the kid in the back of my group sessions who hadn't smiled in weeks until I handed him a paintbrush. I was living for the single mom who said, You're the first adult my daughter has trusted in a long time. I was living for myself, for every inch I'd climbed without anyone cheering, and I knew then. I didn't need Dad's approval to feel proud. I needed my own. So I stood up, walked to the mirror, and looked myself in the eyes. I whispered, "You are not what he said you are." And for the first time in years, I believed it. A few weeks passed. I didn't call. I didn't text. And no one from the family reached out to me either. It was like I had disappeared and no one noticed. But life, as it often does, turned in a strange direction. It was Ava again who broke the silence. She messaged me late one night. "Dad collapsed at work. Hospital. They don't know if it's his heart." I stared at the screen, my chest tightened, but not from panic. It was a strange mix of emotions: worry, anger, confusion, and guilt. I didn't owe him anything, but he was still my father. I showed up the next day, walked into the hospital room, and there he was, hooked up to machines, tubes in his arms, pale and frail in a way I had never seen before. He didn't notice me at first. He was half asleep, but when he opened his eyes and saw me, he turned away. A nurse said he'd been asking for my siblings all morning. Not once did he mention me. I sat quietly at the end of the room, watching him breathe, and I thought, this man, the one who couldn't say he was proud of me, the one who made me question my worth, now looked more human than ever, vulnerable, small. For a split second, I saw past the anger. I saw the man who once taught me how to ride a bike, who held my hand when I was 5 and scared of thunderstorms. But then I remembered. That same man had called me a loser, in front of everyone I loved, and never once said sorry. I stood up. I looked at him one more time, and I left. Not out of revenge, but to protect the version of me I had finally begun to rebuild. Weeks went by after my quiet visit to the hospital. I didn't hear anything. No messages, no updates, nothing. I told myself I had made peace with it, but deep down, I was still waiting. Waiting for a call, a text, even a short, awkward message saying, "Thanks for coming." But it never came. I kept working, kept living. But every time my phone lit up, I hoped it would be him. I kept telling myself I didn't care, but the truth was, I did. Ava finally called me one evening. "He's home now," she said quietly. "Still recovering, still stubborn." I laughed bitterly. "Sounds about right." Then she paused. "He asks about you, you know," she said. Not directly, but I can tell. I didn't know how to respond. If he wanted to talk to me, why didn't he? Why did he only speak in riddles and silence? "You should come to dinner," Ava offered. "We're keeping it small, just the family." The word family hit harder than I expected. I thought about it for days, and then I said yes. When I walked into that dinner, it was like entering a museum of memories. The same kitchen, the same smells, the same uncomfortable chairs that somehow survived decades. Dad was there, quiet, watching. Our eyes met. For a moment, no one else existed, but then he looked away, again. No apology, no acknowledgement, just silence. And that silence said more than any words ever could. So I sat down, ate, laughed with my siblings, pretended everything was fine. But inside I was grieving, not for him, but for the father I had always wished he could be. After that dinner, something shifted inside me. I realized I had spent my entire life waiting for approval, waiting for kindness, waiting for my dad to say, "I'm proud of you." But he never would. And maybe that was okay, because for once, I was done being silent. So I wrote him a letter. Not a bitter one, not angry, just honest. I told him how much it hurt when he said what he did at the reunion, how it felt like being 10 years old again, holding up my school award and watching his eyes slide past me to my brother. I told him I wasn't a loser. Maybe I didn't take the path he would have chosen. Maybe I wasn't loud or traditional or the picture-perfect child he imagined. But I was kind, hardworking, and I had made something of myself, on my own terms. I told him that I forgave him. Not for him, but for me. Because I didn't want to carry this pain anymore. I left the letter with Ava. She promised she'd give it to him. And then I let go. For the first time in my life, I felt free. Not because things were perfect, not because the past was erased, but because I had finally spoken my truth. My dad may never understand me. He may never apologize, and that's his burden to carry, not mine. I chose peace. I chose self-respect. I chose to stop waiting and start living. And that was the moment I truly came home to myself. A few weeks after sending the letter, I got a message from Ava. She said Dad had read it. In silence, didn't say a word for the rest of the day. Didn't deny it, didn't defend himself, just sat there. I don't know if that means he finally saw me. And honestly, it doesn't matter anymore. Because this isn't about getting closure from someone else. It's about giving it to yourself. I look at my life now, the friends who love me for who I am, the quiet home I've built, the little moments of joy I no longer overlook. And I think maybe being the loser was the biggest gift of all. It taught me compassion. It taught me grit. It taught me to build a life not based on someone else's standards, but my own values. At that reunion, I felt like a shadow in my own family. Now, I stand in the light I created for myself. And if you're watching this, and you've ever felt invisible, unworthy, like the odd one out, let me tell you something. You are enough. You don't have to shrink to make others comfortable. You don't have to earn love that should have been given freely. The day I stopped apologizing for who I am was the day I became whole. So maybe I wasn't the golden child, but I became something better. I became me, and no one can take that away again.